Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. My name is Paula Diab, and I'm joined here today by Kristi, and I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to hand over to Kristi so she can introduce herself. So my background is that I'm actually a diabetologist, a family physician, and I work in South Africa. And about a year or two ago, I joined the team at Integrated Diabetes Services, or IDS, and I've been working as a diabetes educator and a clinician with them. I can't tell you how much I've learned from listening to the IDS clinicians and from hearing their experiences, but we'll get more into that a bit later. But my real passion is on diabetes education. I recently wrote a newsletter article that was entitled The Long Road of Chronic Disease Management, and so that's what we're going to be chatting about today. I will hand over to Kristi, and then we'll flip back and introduce the topic for today. Hey, Kristi.
Hey, thanks, Paul. My name's Kristi Paguio, and I am a mental health specialist in diabetes. Myself, I've lived with type 1 for 25 years, and I kind of stumbled into working in the diabetes world when I was in grad school. I didn't even know that existed, and I'm really grateful for my time working in a hospital setting in the diabetes, pediatric, and adult world before going into my own private practice. So my favorite thing to do in the world is to talk about all things diabetes, and especially the mental and the emotional side. So I'm really excited to get to work with Integrated Diabetes Services and then also in my own private practice.
Awesome. And thank you today for joining us. It's always such a pleasure to chat with Kristi. We've done some collaboration in the past, and we've always had great chats together. So it's so nice to connect again. So our topic today is the long road of chronic disease management, or the long road of diabetes management. And in the article, I likened it to a marathon that we have in South Africa that you may or may not have heard of. That's called the Comrades Marathon. And it is a 90-kilometer race. So that's about 55 miles. Run between Pietermaritzburg and Durban, or Durban and Pietermaritzburg. They alternate every year. And it's basically the oldest and the largest ultramarathon in the world. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because the marathon actually runs right past our house. So on the day of the marathon, they close all the roads, and we kind of forced to go and support it because we can't move out of our front doors, basically. But I absolutely love it. The reason I love it is because it's such an awesome testimony to human endurance. So the Comrades was started 1921, so just after the First World War, and it was started by a World War veteran by the name of Vic Clapham. And he envisaged a race that would honor the suffering and celebrate the human spirit's ability to endure hardships. And what began with 34 runners in 1921 has since grown to over 20,000 runners that come every year. And they come from all corners of the globe. Obviously, there's a lot of runners that come from my home province of KwaZulu-Natal. There's a lot of South African runners that come. But I think last year there was an American runner. I think her name was Courtney Olson. I don't even know Kristi, if you've heard of her. But I think she finished third in the women's race last year. I was trying to do some maths before today, and I think her average speed was over 9 miles an hour. And the men's qualifying time I read up for the Boston Marathon is only 8.5 miles per hour for half the distance. So it really is phenomenal to be able to run that speed for that distance of time. They have this race that comes through from one city to another city, and the crowd support along the way is just phenomenal because, as I said, it goes through the suburbs, it goes past many people's homes, goes past many iconic buildings and schools and various different charity organizations, and they all come out on the side of the road and support the race. The other thing I love about it is that you see people of all shapes, sizes, ages, colors. Everybody comes out to run the race. And it always just amazes me. And I look at those people and I think, wow, the training that went in, what is that person's personal journey? What is their personal motivation for running this race? What are they getting out of it? Because obviously there's only one winner, so to speak, who wins the race and runs the fastest, but there's 20,000 other people who also running their own journey. And that always just makes me think about, how these people are doing and what motivates them. And then just that absolute endurance that comes in and plodding along on the tar for 90 kilometers or 55 miles. And there's no relapse. You can't rest on the side and wait. So you have to pace yourself through the race, and you have to make sure you've got that endurance to get to the end of it. And it suddenly dawned on me that this is very much like managing diabetes. There's no time out in diabetes. There's no, I'll just go and sit here on the side of the road and not be diabetic for an hour or a day or a week. There's no winning in diabetes. I don't think we ever get to that perfect control. And I think a lot of what motivates us to get to the end, or to get anywhere in diabetes, not necessarily even the end, is that support that we get from the people around us. So that's what I wanted to bring to the table today. And I think between Kristi and myself, we're going to unpack that a bit and chat about it.
What I love so much, Paula, one, this race, wow, how inspirational. I mean, my goodness. And I also love to connect with you. Here we are in two different hemispheres and talking about diabetes, something that we're both so passionate about. What I love about your observations of the crowd and connecting it with diabetes is this is often the invisible part of diabetes, right? As we've been burdened with this just outrageous self-care regimen that often has unexpected and disappointing results despite our best effort. And we need people around us to be cheering us on. I've not personally run an ultramarathon, I've not run a marathon, but I know. But I would think that along the way, there's different aches and pains and thoughts of self-doubt. And the mental part of running a race I think is a really great parallel to what it is with diabetes. It's just that with a race, there's this natural drawing but no one's inspired by somebody living with diabetes. And yet we can build our crowd. We can build our own support people in our lives that do see us and do acknowledge the aches and the pains and the self-doubt, but keep cheering us on, and also recognize like the extraordinary effort that it is to live with diabetes and to cheer us on. I can't say how instrumental that's been in my life for somebody to just say, I'm sorry that that's happening. Like, you're amazing. And not like in a patronizing way, but there's very few people. So I really had to curate and educate and teach and explain. And I'm always really touched when somebody does understand it. But thinking about the race, how many of us are around people with for those listening, that I would imagine anybody who listening to this podcast probably loves somebody with diabetes or lives with diabetes themselves. But like, think about how many people live with diabetes around the world and they're not getting that. Right? Like, we often think about.
Imagine if we had a big crowd and we were all talking and going, well done, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned just now we're sitting in different hemispheres. We're also sitting on completely different time zones. I've already kind of finished my day. And in fact, the patient that I was seeing just before we joined now was a new young type 1. She's been diagnosed 2 years ago. And when she walked in, I could just see her whole demeanor was all bent over, and she just felt crushed by all the things that she had to do in diabetes. And her mum was saying about how she's not keeping her insulin in the fridge, and she's not changing the needles often enough, and she's not changing her injection sites, and she's not doing this, and she's not doing that. And I could just see this poor little girl she was 12 years old, and she was all sort of crumbled over. And I just said to her, do you give yourself injections at school, or what happens? And she says, no, she gives it herself at school. And then her mum said, yeah, she was diagnosed at the time when her younger sibling was just born. And so she had to take control of her own diabetes. And I thought, that's amazing that from day one you were doing your own injections, and suddenly this child's face just lit up. And instead of focusing on, I don't change my needles often enough, and I don't keep it in the fridge, and I don't do this, and I don't do that, focus on what you are doing. It's exactly the same when you're standing on the side of the road in Comrades, and you don't say to the person, "Oh, you're not picking your legs up properly," or "You don't have the right shoes on that you're running with." You say, "Come on, let's keep going, keep going, keep going," even though you can see that whole person is bent and crushed over. And I think the nice thing in diabetes is we get to choose our crowd. You can choose your educator, you can choose your doctor and your team that you build around you. And I think that's what's so valuable. Choose the right people.
And to sometimes maybe you can't, and you can't, right? Like we're working with it, but I think we can, if you are able to choose healthcare providers, then to some extent, right, that you can find the ones that are the best fit for you. But we know we're working within broken systems, right? But you can cultivate that crowd in your own personal life, right? Where maybe you've got a little bit more control. You can, if you're a kid, you can choose friends that get it. If mom and dad are struggling with that, mom and dad can know, like, just.
And it's so important to focus on the positives as well in that, in that support team. There can be so many negatives.
It's bananas what people with diabetes have to think about. And it's so easy in everybody's anxiety of how to perfect or to do everything right. And that's that constant, maybe wind coming against us, the winds blowing against us in life. It's just extra with diabetes. There's so much more wind resistance. I wish like I've had type 1 for 25 years, and you would think that I would have this perfected. It's just not how diabetes works. Like there's no cracking the code, really. I mean, without like fine tuning to the long race mentality versus the short sprint. I was going to say, I was thinking my husband and I went out to eat just a quick little burger joint in town on Friday. And the woman that was helping us, I saw a CGM patch on her arm, and my eyes just, I'm a fan, right? Like I'm her fan. I am her crowd support. And then I'm like, me too. And like, well, all I did was I said, "Do you have type 1? And I think I said type 1 question mark. And she was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I've had it for this long." And like this little, like, I see your gear and I see your device.
But how awesome that you've got type 1 and you're still having a burger, because a lot of people think, "I've got type 1, I can't have a burger, or I can't go out, or I can't do this, or I can't do that." And I think, half of the reason that I enjoy working at IDS so much, and I think I connected so well with all the clinicians, is because my mentality towards diabetes has always been, let's see how I can help you manage your diabetes and not let your diabetes manage you. And I think it's so incredibly powerful when you've got so many clinicians who are actually living with diabetes, who can help you to manage it, and to say, "This is my experience. This is how I have a burger," and I can still live a so-called normal life. I don't like that word at all, but a non-diabetic life, I've just got to know how to do it, and I can do it. I think it's extremely
there were definitely seasons in my life where I thought, I'm going to perfect this. I am going to be so dialed in and it didn't last. It maybe lasted a couple of years, and then the pendulum swung. I always talk about it like the pendulum will swing if you go too far one direction. It's just physics. It's just a matter of time before the pendulum will swing the other. So I've learned that all foods fit outside of foods that your body has an allergy to, or if it has poison on it, right? This is the diabetes joke. Like all foods fit, because as soon as we restrict something, it's going to lead to ruminations, which is going to lead to so I just have found to live in that messy middle where the pendulum swings and I listen to my body. And because of that, I got to be a crowd fan to this amazing woman working at the restaurant.
That's amazing. But isn't that exactly what running an ultramarathon is like? You've got to pace yourself. You can't sprint that entire 55 miles. You're going to kill yourself. No matter how.
The thought of like never having a burger because you live with diabetes or that's bad, or that's doing something.
You can't have ice cream, you can't have burgers, you can't have pizzas, you can't have sweets. That's nonsense.
That's just that's not the mindset for the long haul, the long race.
Yeah. And I mean, in that pacing yourself sort of metaphor. So I mentioned that the race goes between Durban and Pietermaritzburg, and typically the race from Maritzburg to Durban is called the down run, and the run from Durban to Maritzburg is called the up run, because of the altitudes. But actually, even in the down run, there are still 5 major hills that the athletes have to run up. And I think, again, like even in life, you think, oh, it's all downhill. I've got all the tools and diabetes. I know exactly what I'm doing. You're still going to come across an obstacle somewhere along the line that you're going to have to deal with, whether it's a pregnancy along the line, or whether it's menopause along the line, or whether it's some type of crisis at work, or some type of life stressor, or illness, or whatever it is. You're going to come across some little uphill that you're going to have to pace yourself through.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had diabetes on my wedding day. I had diabetes on my honeymoon. I had diabetes at funerals when I lost a parent. Like, I've had diabetes when I was rupturing an appendix, and like I had diabetes on my best and my worst days, and then everything in between. Very much to like that race, or even in the simple part of thinking about my little restaurant treat on Friday was I had to use different strategies. I picture it like maybe it's one of those hills, right? Where I had to, maybe a runner has to change pace or focus on something else as the elevation gets more difficult. For me, I had to employ a different strategy for my diabetes, which was to take a lot more insulin, count way more carbs than I would typically do. It's a little scary to see those numbers, but knowing it's not my first rodeo getting this treat, but yeah, it's thinking about the hills that we can manage, right? Whether it's up or down, and shifting our strategy so we can keep running, keep going, and not beat ourselves up for things that we
Absolutely.
think we're doing
And the day
wrong.
that you have a ruptured appendix, that's going to take precedence over your diabetes, because it's a life-threatening emergency and you need to sort it out. And if your sugars are not perfectly controlled, I mean, obviously you want to try and control them better and get rid of the infection. But if they're not perfectly controlled, your focus needs to turn to that ruptured appendix.
Word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program.
Well, and what happened for me with that example is that my blood sugars were an indicator letting me know that my body was fighting a huge infection. And so it wasn't that I was failing, it's that my body was communicating to me some really important information. And then I actually reached out to one of my dear friends who's a diabetes educator from the hospital and said, how do I target this? What do I do to change my settings while I'm dealing with this? And so that was my crowd, right? I reached out to somebody in my support system that I could text, right? On a Sunday, like I don't have that access to my healthcare provider.
Diabetes happens on a Sunday too.
It happens on a Sunday right? And so it wasn't anything that I was doing wrong. It was that my body was communicating something to me. And I had to manage that too. I mean, not that maybe the hospital couldn't have helped, but like I just really had to, I don't know, I'm so independent with it. I had to figure it out. Not only was I dealing with this life-threatening emergency, I was also managing my diabetes throughout. Really heroic. Living with diabetes is heroic.
It absolutely is. But I mean, how important is that message to say to people when your sugars are not perfect like you want them to be? Maybe just take a step back and look, what is actually going on? Like, am I getting a big infection? Is it stress that's causing the sugars to go up? Is there a problem with my pump? Is there a problem with my insulin pen? And just start sort of logically going through all those things.
Some compassionate curiosity towards ourselves
Absolutely.
can give us, if we can take the judgment out And just be curious about what's happening and compassionate about, oh, this is not, oh, like, man, that just frees us up to keep running, keep pace, right? Expecting us to do it perfectly or expecting diabetes to, it's just not life. There's nowhere, any other part of life that anything is perfect, but we expect this of ourselves. And we think it's like our personal failure if something's not.
And it's so much easier when you've got a sore knee and you're running and you can feel the knee is sore. It forces you to stop and it forces you to do something about it because you can't physically carry on running anymore. But I think the problem in diabetes is you see these elevated sugars or you see some, whatever problem it is with diabetes, and immediately you just sort of internalize it and think, I must be something that I'm doing wrong. And I think it's so important to just take that step back and have, what did you say? That's
Curiosity.
passionate curiosity. I love that.
Yeah.
And just have this sort of compassionate curiosity towards what's going on and just interrogate it a little bit and pay attention to it.
And teach this to your crowd, right? Teach this to the people in your support system so that they know to have compassion and to be curious, right? That instead of it being like, well, what did you do wrong? Or what did you not do right? Or what it like, there's only so many variables that are within our control.
Yep.
So, but we often think because it's self-managed that therefore it must be myself or ourselves that we did something wrong. And that's just not, I love to be able to work with people to help lighten their load. What you were talking about with that little girl, you modeled that for mom, right? Who's so worried about her daughter and wants the very best for her and probably hates that. I know now even meeting her, I know she hates that her daughter has to deal with this but to lighten that load, right? To see those shoulders come up or down if there's tension, right?
But I think it's also, that for me, again, it's those small wins that we make along the way that all build up together. And I think one thing that strikes me certainly when I watch the race is there's one winner, they try to break it down. They say, oh, this is the fastest male and the fastest female. And then they break it down into age groups and the fastest veteran and whatever, or the fastest South African runner or the fastest international runner. You could break it down, but actually there's just one winner in the end. But for me, I look at all those people and each person has got their own journey and each person is setting their own personal bests and improving on their own time from last year, or last year they did it all by themselves. This year they're running with a friend. And I think it's very similar in diabetes. There is no one winner at the end of the day. I mean, who's the winner in diabetes? I don't know. The person who lives the longest, the person who doesn't have any complications. For me, the winner is in diabetes is the person who continuously builds on their own personal journey every day. And so for me, that little girl that now knows how to inject herself properly and she knows why and she feels empowered by the fact that she can do it by herself, that's a win for me. And we build on that.
I would imagine running a race is similar to anything in life. Like I know for me, if I've got a busy day ahead of me, I will focus on, kind of chipping away at the day and not just Friday. And I would imagine running an ultra marathon or a marathon or a half marathon or whatever that is, 10K, 5K, that like you're focusing, whatever the challenge is, you're just focusing on like maybe the next mile marker or the next kilometer mark. Like you're focusing on something else or counting mailboxes or whatever that is. So sometimes we have to, yes, like we are looking at the big picture, but the problem is a lot of times we've gone too far out into where we don't actually have, I can't think of anything about Friday right now, but I can focus on today. And I think that that's similar with diabetes is like, yes, big picture is avoid complications when and if at all possible. And yet people still get complications and that's not
a failure,
not their failure. I think it's looking at this, like pacing ourselves and thinking about the winning is defining it maybe as what is our small little goal, like that burger on Friday. I knew that was going to be a challenge. What tools would I need to employ to do that?
for each person it's slightly different. You might want to just go out on Friday night with your husband and have a burger. There might be a young teenager who wants to go and have pizza with her friends. Or there might be someone who's just been diagnosed with diabetes who just wants to know how to get this insulin into their body and avoid going high and avoid going low. So for each person, their target is different, and their win is different from the next person. And I think those wins change as we go along. You know, you've had diabetes now for 20 years. You know how to inject the insulin. That's no longer too much of an issue. But there are other problems that come along that you now have to deal with. So I think,
I think in the beginning of my diagnosis, like it was a much more simpler, just to try to make sure I knew how to stay alive. It was pretty simple what I was trying to focus on so that I could start to understand nutrition. And like, I feel like I had to become a nurse and a dietitian and like all in a very rapid time, where now I feel like I can expand out, do a lot more, and feel comfortable pushing the limits of things a little bit more.
And ultimately, you just have to be Kristi and collect the nurse and the dietitian and the educator and everybody around you. And I think that's what a lot of people with diabetes sometimes try and do, is they try and do everything themselves. And how can I fix it yesterday? There's no fixing it yesterday. There's learning on a daily basis and getting that crowd around you and working through the hard times together and just keep chipping it away at it, as you say.
Yeah, for those listening that don't feel like they have enough people in their life that understand what they're dealing with, or they themselves don't totally understand, don't really even see themselves, right? They're just maybe stuck in that, I'm not doing this perfectly. Find that support, reach out to Paula and myself through Integrated Diabetes or someone else on our team. Like, build that support system. They're going to be diamonds in the rough. Like, they're going to be needles in haystacks sometimes. Like, there's not a bajillion of us, but we're out there.
Do you know what I really like about the IDS team is that everyone's got their own sort of personal journey and their own person. For me, it's like a puzzle, and everyone kind of fits together. Like Kristi, you've got a background in mental health, and that's where your expertise lie. My expertise on weight management and dealing with people with type 2 diabetes, and starting on the insulin journey. And other people have got backgrounds in exercise management or dietetics, or,
Say pregnancy already.
all the different perspectives. And so often we see people and they say, and we'll find clients will bounce between us and get a little bit of help from this person, a little bit of help from that person. And I think that's what's so awesome and works so nicely. And I think I was reflecting on the beginning. I was just saying how much I've learned from the IDS clinicians, just listening to different people's perspectives and different people's journeys. And there's always something new to learn. There's always another hill to conquer. There's always another mile ahead of you that you've got to run. And I think if we can gather that crowd and learn from each other, it's so powerful.
Well, and I think that as a mental health professional, there's so much that I can only build upon so much. Not that there's not always something to learn, but boy, diabetes is just at a whole other pace with technology and algorithm. It just is, there, in a lot of ways, that is the ultramarathon, where like it's like the finish line and what is the finish line? The finish line for us is whether that's a cure or that is, our own, like the finish line. And so that, I don't know what the finish line. I don't know where I
don't know where this is going. I just know I'm going to keep at it.
It all just kind of circles back. Build up your support system, cultivate that over time. Seek out outside resources, build it up to help you pace yourself, because it is, most people who don't live with diabetes, if they had to walk a week with actual blood sugar, like what we deal with, they would rumble. And what we make look invisible is we're being our own pancreas. Like, that is I can't speak enough. I think the biggest thing to protect against is thinking of this body as an enemy instead of it being something that we approach with respect and compassion, right? And we need other people around us to do the same thing, that it's not a personal failure. It is life with diabetes, and it is unlike anything else on this planet.
I just want to read to you something that I wrote in that article, and just listening to you now, it really just struck a chord with me. So I said, think of the 400 million people worldwide living with diabetes and the 650 plus million people living with obesity in the world, or pre-diabetes. And I said, they too are endurance athletes. Their race is not televised. They don't have water tables on the side to help them all the time, but they wake up every day and just keep going. And I said, let us honor their journey with the same admiration that we give to those who cross the finish line of the Comrades Marathon, because managing a lifelong condition with courage, commitment, and self-compassion is actually the ultimate ultramarathon. And I think that's exactly what you were just saying. It's an invisible race that we're running. And I think it's so important for people to just remember it's not a one-size-fits-all. There is no finish line that you're going to cross and someone's going to give you a gold medal at the end of it. You've got to pace yourself. The race isn't ending tomorrow, and you've got to gather that support around you and choose your team and use your team to the best of your ability. And I think for me, that's the message that I really want to get out there and get more people to understand, people with diabetes and people who are on that support team to understand.
For those in the support system that are potentially listening to this, we know that anything that would have a negative bias towards it, or where we know that where there's a positive belief in something, in someone, that is actually what draws them more than that critical, judgmental, that deflates. And so it is so important to think of strengths and to think, I love what you wrote and that you read that again right now, like that, the psychology around that is well published, right? It's that positive psychology. It's the negative bias. Like it's all within that we're going to be drawn to things that make us feel good. We're going to do better when we feel better about ourselves and we're focused on something positive. Then if we've got a negative emotion, it's going to draw us back. We're going to shrink back. Our body actually responds to that. So that respect, that compassion, that cure, like all of those things are what propel people with diabetes forward. And if they're struggling with it themselves, be that person that cheers them on, that says, how can I support? Like, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. This is brutal. See them. Don't say, well, what did you not do right? What did you do wrong? Like there may be something in that, maybe that was, but that's not going to help. That's not, I think that's such a forward in the race.
It's such a powerful message just to say, I see you, I support you, I'm here for you. What can I do for you? I acknowledge what you're going through. Oh, Kristi, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate the time together today. And I really hope that people listening, whether you have diabetes or whether you're supporting someone with diabetes, that you acknowledge and see that incredible endurance and incredible marathon that people are running. And it's not about winning. It's about those small wins along the way and just pacing yourself and just getting to the finish line, improving on what happened yesterday, doing better for tomorrow, and just finding the right people around you that you can support yourself with. I think if we could do that, then we really won.
Make your goal attainable. Don't make it so big, like finishing that race. Make it incremental, right? And cheer yourself along. Make sure that self-talk is cheering yourself on. Good job, atta girl, atta boy. Like just keep
going.
Fun. Keep going. We see you.
So I hope that this podcast today has inspired you, motivated you, put things into perspective, given you something to think about. If you want to touch base with either Kristi or myself, you need a good crowd supporter. I'm really good at crowd support, by the way. I'm fantastic at handing out water and oranges on the side of the road. For any of the IDS clinicians, I'm sure we've all got our own different strengths and things that we enjoy doing, but we hope to see and hear more of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services. where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Shiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.